just a visual, like your senses should feel something, and then your senses will feel something, then that'll connect to your soul in some manner if it's art that appeals to you. That's what art is. And whether it's performing arts, visual arts, you don't really need to, it's the artist's job to understand what that is. The Rasik's job is to love it. You just simply love it. You give it the love and you will get more back. It's as simple as that.
Hello and welcome to the Anahita Speaker Series presented by Carnegie India, celebrating stirring stories of empowerment, struggle, and success from women professionals in different fields across the globe. Stories we hope are bound to inspire young professionals. I'm Vrinda Sahai, working with the Security Studies program at Carnegie India. Today, we are honored to have with us Ms. Shivani Varma. She is an internationally recognized Kathak dancer, a disciple of Pandit Birju Maharaj and Guru Shobna Narayan. An empaneled Indian Council of Cultural Relations artist, she has been performing professionally for over a decade. Shivani has represented India at both the opening and closing ceremonies of the Commonwealth Games in 2010. She has also been a TEDx Gateway performer and a youth speaker. Rooted in tradition, yet associated with the fashion world, she has used Kathak as an idiom in all its technical and emotive stances. She is also the recipient of Sanatan Sangeet Puraskar, the Nav Kiran Award, and has been recognized by Young Fiki Ladies Organization for her contributions to culture, craft, and community. Shivani, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. So, beginning with our first question, I am really interested to know about your journey. I understand you were exposed to the world of dance and law from a young age. What was that journey like, and how did you choose dance over law eventually?
So I was associated with both at a young age because I come from a family of lawyers, and I was very inspired, particularly by my maternal grandfather. And just seeing the discussions that used to happen every day from as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a lawyer. So that's how the law came into, my system. As for dance, it came before I even knew what I was doing with myself because my mother was very keen I learn a classical dance because she had been inspired by artists like Maharajji and like, Sonal Mansingh ji. And she just felt that if she has a daughter, then she must learn some Indian art dance form. So she started training. She found teachers for me at a very early age. I started learning dance when I was 3, but I started learning classical dance at 7. And I think that's the right way to go about it also, because at 3, you're not maybe necessarily ready for the rigor of a classical dance. So my teacher was very nice. He used to teach me things in folk dance and just lighter movement practices that eventually made a base for an interest in the classical. So both of these things started around the same time, one consciously and one subconsciously. And I think the decision, what finally worked was more like, I think dance chose me rather than I chose it, because for me, up to a certain point, it was very equal. I wanted to be a lawyer, yet I was dancing a lot. So it just happened that I got some amazing opportunities. I think having the right teacher, the right practice, the right circumstance brought me into this world in a way that I would have never thought that I could achieve if I'd planned it out even. I think it's been great.
Okay, thank you so much for explaining. That was a really unique journey, I must say. So I've seen that you've used your platform often to talk about the disconnect that happens between the Indian community and traditional art forms. What are some of the things you think that artists and audiences should keep in mind or should keep doing to keep the connection alive?
See, the thing is, this is a very important question because we belong to a very ancient and very rich civilization. So the heritage is actually our greatest wealth. Being a developing country, uh, we, within this wealth, we are possibly the greatest one, definitely right up there, right? So to preserve and to take it forward into the future is very important, because it dates back centuries, but how are we going to process this information for the now? And I think what artists need to do is to be very generous in their outlook towards each other and what they're sharing with with the community. And rasiks, I would call them, because that's the exchange. There's rasiks are the people, the connoisseurs. So in Indian art, traditionally, there is an equal weight given to the person who's watching. So the person watching has to be very responsible as well to the art that he or she is patronizing or watching. So this exchange, we've lost a little bit of this balance, I think. So I would say that the artists need to be a little more generous and a little more open to expanding what they have traditionally felt is the area where this should operate, because none of our texts actually prescribe that it has to be in a very particular, it's a very, very liberal system, even from the way we can see it in the old times. But what happens is, with time, people start putting in their own dogmas because that's what they know best, and then they want to propagate just that. And students blindly just follow that. And it's not necessary that the teacher wants you to be an exact copy. The teacher himself or herself has evolved in the time that they were practicing it, right? So no true guru will actually want the disciple to be a replica. They want you to move with the times, because their aim is that you spread the art and you share the message. So that's very important from where the artists, and I think artists are a little bit amiss in this. Many people are trying. It's not that it's everyone, many people are trying. And I think the connoisseurs need to show a little bit of restraint and a little more connection with their Indian identity, or whatever. I'm talking Indian identity because we're talking about Indian arts. So as Indians, we need to connect a little bit more with our own language, our own culture, our own systems, because if we don't connect with that, we are becoming replicas of an alien system. And we can never truly be the greatest in that, right? It's not ours. Like, it's as simple as that. But what we have, which is truly great, so we have to connect to how we are about being Indian. And if we become that, then that synergy between the artist and the audience is going to really move towards changing this culture of disconnect.
So, just to follow up, because I am very interested to understand the audience part of it, since I am not a performer myself. But do you think that just beginning in a process of attending performances, or just to get to know a little bit more about the art form itself, how do you think an audience can engage with the field a little bit more? Just what's the first step that someone can take?
I think the first step is to be open to the idea that it's not something you will not enjoy. It's a lot of people have started believing that because it's something old or something traditional, I don't understand it. There's a bit of an alienation, or even it might be coming from a place of lack of knowledge. Like, you think you won't understand it, but at the end of the day, an art, any form of art, even if it's a visual art, like painting, for example, visual art has seen a huge revival now in India. Everyone wants to buy art, whether they know it or don't know it. Everyone wants to own it somehow. So does how many people really truly understand the work of those people whose art is in their house? Do you understand the brushstrokes? Do you understand what's gone into it at the time? You don't, and you don't need to, because the beauty of connecting with art is it's individual. It's what you like is not necessary that I like the same thing, but that doesn't make either of our decisions or opinions wrong. So you like something, it's a thing of beauty, it's a thing to enjoy. And a thing of beauty lasts forever. So if you want to have something, so this is the part where the audience needs to maybe understand that you don't have to. It's great if you've had exposure from childhood, because these are ways to understand it better and better. But as soon as you engage a little bit, you want to know a little bit more than that. Then put in an effort to know a little bit. Then some may read about it. But it's very important to understand that appreciation is actually just a visual, like your senses should feel something, and then your senses will feel something, then that'll connect to your soul in some manner if it's art that appeals to you. That's what art is. And whether it's performing arts, visual arts, you don't really need to, it's the artist's job to understand what that is. the Rasik's job is to love it. You just simply love it. You give it the love, and you will get more back. It's as simple as that.
I think that's very insightful that for an audience, the connection does not necessarily need to be on an intellectual level. It can be at any level. And we should definitely begin exploring that and take the step to begin exploring that.
Yeah, I think it's more emotional. I think the relationship with art is actually emotional. And in India and many places, it can be spiritual as well. But it's something that you feel. It's not so much a mind.
Right. Okay, so segueing a little bit, taking note from what your past performances have been, how do you think classical Indian dance contributes to women's empowerment? So, both historically and especially in the contemporary times, how does it contribute to this empowerment?
So, there's been a long period of evolution again because it's such an ancient tradition. And there are parts of it, I mean, you hear stories. For example, Kathak was essentially male dominated. For years there were male performers. But then the Devdasi tradition and then the five culture where the women became really powerful as well. It's something which to be an artist, you really have to, I think, go into the depths of who you are. And therefore, in many ways, gender loses significance, I think. Like, not only gender, but I think religion, like a lot of things to really go into an art form takes a lot of, dissolution of a lot of these paradigms or a lot of boundaries that you may have. So, the search for that art takes you deeper into this creative area or this area where you understand these individual differences of gender or of as I said, all of these community, religion, like all the things that we actually nobody is really born with. These are all social constructs. Art dissolves all that. So when it comes to women, currently we're in a strong position. It's again worked with society. As society has progressed, this has progressed. Historically, of course, the Tawaifs are a very powerful example, very, very powerful example, because it's a very misunderstood culture. Still, it's a very romantic, nostalgic culture because there's so much beauty attached to it. But those were the most powerful women of society. They were matriarchal. They preferred to adopt. They were allowed adoption. They preferred female children because the female children would take over the business, or the thing. And the wives weren't necessarily prostitutes. Like, they were not. They were people. They were repositories of culture, and they were teaching the nawabs and the kings about the finer things of life, poetry and culture. So this was one way that I think the women's dominance came into being in that culture. Again, when society changed and colonization happened, these same women became Nautch girls, and then they had to fight another battle. Today's time, I think women may even be in a more powerful position in the arts because, again, society has made this gendered role, particularly in dance. That a female dancer is more appealing than a male dancer, or that particular background will not send their sons into dancing, but will send their daughters. So again, this is a reverse thing. It's a very complex question because of all the. But I would think that empowerment is coming at the same pace in performing arts as it's coming in society. So we are not. We're not. I don't think we are spearheading anything in it, but we are definitely standing for a position where we are allowed to express a lot more freely, and that gives a lot of freedom to the artist. I don't think it's male or female. So when I speak my mind, I can say what I want. I needn't even say it. I can do it in so many indirect ways that so many people may not even. But I can speak my mind a lot more freely in a performance.
Given your past works, such as your performances that you've conceptualized, including Devki, the Forgotten Mother, Champaran Se Bapu, and Ode to Mahatma Gandhi, what inspired you to conceptualize these performances?
So, when there are a few things I keep in mind when I think of conceptual work. Firstly, I don't like to dilute my own training and my own tradition. So everything I do is purely Kathak. I've learned it from an early age. It's the only form I know. So I don't dilute anything. It's all my performances will have all the elements of a traditional performance or a traditional repertoire, let's say. Second thing I keep in mind is that what is it like? How do we bring it to something that people can connect who are not trained or exposed to the arts? So what are the stories that through story you can connect, right? To a story that people understand and identify with. And the third thing, which is why like I would say that that's common between doing a Devki or a Champaran, which is on Gandhiji, is like what is the lesson that is common to the lessons that we want to learn today. So Devki was about, in a sense, women empowerment because it spoke about how a woman is not did not have the choice to her own destiny. She was not able to, and all the men, and she was known as a man's wife, a man's sister, a man's mother. Krishna's also. So her most famous, that's not all that she was, right? So that's so how, and that's very current. The current is not very different from this is a very old myth. So the connection with the whole women's empowerment thing came from that. So relevance, again, tradition and modernity, everything was in it. Second, like for Gandhi, same thing for Champaran. It was what is it that about Gandhiji is still continuing to be relevant? So my production was actually about values like non-violence. It was about standing up for the truth. It was about like unity and diversity, like all of these things, and that sense of community. Very relevant again. It doesn't matter. These people are epitomizing or symbolizing a certain way of being. It's still relevant, it's still inspiring to be that sort of person. Like, why would you want to be violent when you can achieve the same thing with non-violence? Why would you not break away from the herd to make your point just because you have to have a voice of your own? And these are the sort of examples. This is what inspired me. Like, how is it that we can put this across, and how can we bring it into a narrative which is current that everybody can understand without any exposure to anything.
That's actually very innovative, and I really appreciate the fact that there's a new form of conceptualization itself. So, again, speaking about your journey, particularly, you have collaborated with a wide range of artists, including performance artists, fashion designers, labels, and others. How do you navigate these collaborations and create interdisciplinary Kathak performances that resonate with modern audiences?
If you work with things like fashion, modern audiences are anyway resonating, so they make half your job. They really, really make your job easier. Also, I think modern audiences find it very appealing that someone can walk both worlds, in that sense. So that gives me an automatic advantage. I don't think I deserve immediate credit for it because it's just my circumstances. That's my education, that's my background, that's my training as a dancer. I've just been very, very fortunate to have these combinations. But yes, when I present something, again, I keep in mind that I am not doing anything that dilutes the years of training and the centuries of learning that have come down from that time, through my gurus. That no one should think that there's a dilution of that. And collaborations actually are very exciting because you get to present like your own movement vocabulary, which is which is derived. Obviously, it's derived from your years of training, but it allows you to express a lot more freely. Because people are open to a lot more in those situations. So it's very interesting. Also, in some places, I use very traditional things in that very modern setup because people just don't think that it's traditional then, although it's very traditional, and it brings something like that back into circulation in a modern way. So the collaboration is actually very exciting, and fashion has a lot of funding because it's like the elephant in the room, but funding is very important in the sort of patronage that in today's world fashion is getting. Classical arts are certainly not getting. So it gives a lot of opportunity and a lot of scope. And fashion designers again are very creative people. The people who work on those teams are, at the top of their jobs. So they make it very easy uh, uh, to bring back that tradition with that entire glamour of it because there is a lot of funding. So the lights are great, the costumes are great, your the teams are great, and all that makes a lot of difference to the entire product. It's actually a real pleasure to work in those collaborations.
That's wonderful to know. So, Shivani, beyond dance, what are some of your other passions and interests, and how do you think they might influence or intersect with your artistic pursuits?
I'm not a multifaceted person. This is what I really love to do, and this is what I've fortunately ended up doing. It was not meant to happen. I think in terms of pursuits, I really enjoy reading. I really also enjoy writing, and I think all of these things just tie into, again, me as a dancer, And now I sort of like I've created a new platform with dance. I initiated this whole movement for a World Kathak Day, which talks about Kathak as a storyteller, which makes it inclusive for everyone to be a part of it. Like, you're a storyteller, I'm a storyteller. Like, everything tells a story. It's not about one dance form. So I would say, I think at the moment that's my focus but everything in my life is stemming out of my dance journey. I don't think I have any other room. I've dabbled with things, and I used to, I learned writing a little bit, I learned knitting a little bit, but I won't think these qualify as hobbies anymore because I didn't stick with them. But I really enjoy all the things that are coming out of my dance journey, which become hobbies, because the mainstay is the riyaz. Everything else actually is a hobby. The riyaz is the center point in what I do.
Right. So, speaking specifically to your passion of Kathak, might be a difficult task, but do you mind explaining this passion, or have you had a very memorable performance that made a very significant impact on you?
It's much more than, it's not a passion really, it's more like a companion, which also, it's interesting. I discovered this in a recent interview that I did, a shoot I did for someone, and they asked me the question. Dance is a companion now, it's something which is present at all times in various ways and will fortunately never let me be alone. So it's something which, it's very hard to explain what it is to me, but I think it's something that makes me feel like, um, all the things that you read about when you read anything remotely spiritual, that where's the connectedness, the connection with the self, or the connection with the divine. Now, whether that divine is your concept of what's within you or is above you, I think dance is that for me. Like, it really has created this circle of light, in my life. And I think that happens for you do anything with good intent, and you're 100% of yourself. It could be anything at all. I think it gives you that light. So that is what dance is to me. It's that light. And what was the second part of your question? You said,
Any memorable performance that had an impact on you, stayed with you?
the most memorable, if I was to pick one, would be the experience, not particularly just the performance, the experience of the Commonwealth Games opening ceremony. Because I was very young in my dance journey at that point of time. And it was, one of the most spectacular events that happened around that time. More than that, it brought me, like, it was where both my gurus were, sort of working together at the same, venue. In retrospect, these are things that make it so important for me. So at that point, I was training with Shobna Didi, and I had not yet started training under Maharaji. But Maharaji was in charge of the choreography of that Tree of Knowledge piece, which was, the classical dance pieces, which had six dance forms, six classical dance forms, and hundreds of dancers. There were lots of us. And those months of practice that preceded that show were, like daily interaction with him. And it's the show where he noticed me, really, and he noticed me and then invited me to take classes from him. Of course, I went to him many years later, not at that time. But I know now from when I learned from him later, and when he and I, established that connection, that it's something that from that time he had been, like, he had sort of identified that this is my disciple, so this is going to be my disciple. And gurus have that. Again, traditionally, it's the guru who finds you, and in my case, both my gurus did find me. So this becomes very, very impactful, I think, in my entire journey, because it's where both their energies were there. And it was just, it was an India event, like, it was something like a very, as a very proud Indian, it was something very exciting to, be a part of So I think that's been my most, if I was to say, impactful performance in my journey has been that one.
That's wonderful. And of course, that was the most impactful one. I completely understand the sentiment involved behind the performance as well. So, Shivani, speaking to you as an expert artist in the field, you are someone who's represented Kathak on international platforms. So, how do you see classical Indian dances evolving in the modern world at a global stage?
The global stage is kinder to Indian artists actually. So and our dances are very, very rich. I don't think we need to do anything to them. What I think is important though is that the community of dancers in India or the community of performing artists needs to very seriously come together and very seriously have a lobby, where everyone speaks for the art together in one voice for one purpose. And unfortunately, that is a very, very big negative in the performing arts field right now. That everyone, and to a certain extent, it's understandable, but beyond a point, it's not, in my experience. That after you have achieved a certain thing for yourself, you should be able to think of the larger picture. And in the international scenario, only when that happens, collectively as artists will be like, for example, why don't none of our classical dance forms is UNESCO World Heritage, intangible World Heritage? Not one. And that to me is the most telling thing when you have dance forms like flamenco, which derives from the gypsies, I mean, it derives from Kathak. It's like it's very clear that even in Spain they recognize that fact, right? That is intangible world heritage, and it's got that status. But Garba has got it now, which is great. It's folk dance. But the intricacies, the people who have put in the effort to make these dance forms, it's absolutely unfathomable to me that not one of our classical dance forms, and when we have such a rich and nuanced collection of them, has not. And that is a failing of the Indian arts community to not come together and speak for the art itself. This is the hope that I feel in the global scenario. Performance wise, everyone's going to have their day in the sun if you're like, you use a combination of your talent, your network, your positioning, your luck, whatever it is. So there's enough good work happening, in that sense. This is something that I feel very, very strongly about, and I hope that it changes.
So, your answer actually links me very well to my next question. And to understand your journey on a personal level, you've chosen a sort of an unconventional career choice. However, there is a general hesitation, as you may also have recognized among people, to pursue any career in a art form, whether performing, visual, or any form of art. Did you personally face any inhibitions in the beginning, or how did you navigate the challenges you confronted?
My journey getting into it has been quite a dream. It sounds like a fairy tale, and I cannot, even if I want to say otherwise, because it was never my intention to be a dancer. I was not on this journey, but just kept meeting the right gurus, the right mentors, the right, support gurus. It's been beautiful. I literally can't ask for more. So, but there have been challenges being a part of the fraternity in a lot of ways. There have been challenges of, and again, we were speaking of, women's empowerment and all. In some places, there, I don't know how to put this politely, but like, there is a lot of resistance to difference. There's a lot of resistance to difference, and there is an expectation of conformity, which is really, really disturbing. And that became a very big issue because I've essentially I'm a complete outsider. I do not come from any, background of dance. So it was like a reverse issue happening where your education was almost a bad thing, where you're, coming from a certain, even affluence was a bad thing because all the credit you got was not yours. It's because of somebody else, because of what you have. And there, so I faced things like ostracism, like a lot of like, people fighting for the attentions of, and I've been very, very lucky and blessed in both my gurus who are like renowned, like avowed masters, like nobody can dispute, what they are, what they stand for. And I have, truly shared that Guru Shishya Parampara relationship with both of them, which I'm so blessed. And that created, again, a lot of complications from the fraternity and the mindsets that came with it. So it's been those were the sort of challenges that I faced, not actually about entering into dance, because I have a very supportive family. My mother, as I told you, wanted this for me before I wanted it. Nobody in my family ever objected to the fact that I was a dancer. I think all these things have come into play with that whole colonization when this whole Nautch girl thing started, which a lot of people are now getting rid of. It's no longer a bad thing to be a dancer or to be a musician. The resistance now is also because there's no money in in these arts. Like, so if you have to make a career that sustains your life, unless you resort to teaching, it is very, very hard. It's next to impossible. That's the challenge. Again, going back to your initial question about the exchange between audience and artist, is that we need patronage. We need patronage, and we need people to invest in it, because otherwise, the art doesn't flourish. The ages, if we see historically where it flourished, is because the patronage and the audiences were so invested in what was happening. So we need that to come back. That is a challenge. Fortunately, I don't have to face this challenge, but this is a very big challenge for the arts, that people will resist, even if you want to be a dancer, unless you have the financial backing. How do you make this a full-time profession if you can't sustain your life? How do you earn money? Very practical.
So, Shivani, to end with, I would like to know, given all of your achievements till now, what is the next thing for you? What's that one bucket list item you would really like to achieve or experience next?
This whole idea of a community, hopefully someday, that is a dream. And I think to achieve one of those things is this World Kathak Day. My little drop in the ocean that I hope reaches somewhere, because we need to come together. We really, really need to come together, and that's the contribution that I would, at least, even if I don't need to be known as the person who started this or wanted this, but it'll change the entire landscape for us. So this is going to be where I want to focus. My life's work. I mean, I don't think I've achieved so much. I think there's a lot to be done. But I want to do, because I have been so blessed in the gifts that I have got from my gurus, that I don't want to just keep it to myself. People need to understand that it is the most beautiful life to be to be an artist. It's actually the most beautiful life, and the artists need that life to be beautiful with money. Nobody can survive with that. And we need people to engage. People will engage only if all of us come together and make that point as a collective, not that my performance is better than yours, or that I dance more than you or less than you. We need to see ourselves as people who are custodians of this really great tradition, and take it forward from where our gurus have entrusted it to us.
That's a really beautiful thought, and thank you for sharing that with us. Coming to an end, thank you so much, Shivani, for taking the time to have this conversation today. To our audience, we hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. Do visit Carnegie India's YouTube channel to access all the episodes of the Anahita Speaker Series. Thank you, and see you next month.